The massive station hung in space like a silver flower, its petals stretching outward into the void. Council Station Epsilon 7 was home to 43 different species, all living together in what they called harmony. Ships came and went every hour, bringing diplomats and traders from across the galaxy. Doyun stood outside the human embassy doors, his rifle held across his chest. He had been standing there for 6 hours now. His shift would end in 2 more hours, and then Junho would replace him. This was how it had been for 3 weeks since the humans arrived. Other species walked past him in the corridor. Some stared. Some whispered to each other. A few laughed openly. Doyun ignored them all. His eyes moved constantly, watching every person who came near. His training never stopped. Even here, in this place, that everyone called safe. Inside the embassy, Hyrie was preparing for another council meeting. She adjusted her diplomatic uniform and checked her reflection one last time. The dark blue suit was covered in small pins representing Earth and its colonies. She looked professional, she thought. She looked ready. Another day of explaining ourselves, she said to Minho, who was organizing data tablets on the desk. Minho looked up and smiled slightly. They will understand eventually. Or they will not. Either way, we continue. Hyrie walked to the door. It opened automatically, and there stood Doyun, exactly where she had left him that morning. Any problems? She asked. No problems, Doyun replied without looking at her. His eyes were still scanning the corridor. They think we are crazy, Hyrie said quietly. Let them think what they want, Doyun said. I have a job to do. Hyrie walked past him into the corridor. The station was beautiful, she had to admit. The walls were made of something that looked like crystal, but was stronger than steel. Light came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Plants from a dozen worlds grew in carefully maintained gardens along the main paths. It looked like paradise. She made her way to the council assembly hall. The room was enormous, with seating for representatives from every member species. The ceiling was transparent, showing the stars beyond. It was designed to make everyone feel small and united at the same time. Velthar was already there, grooming its antennae with delicate foreleg movements. The insectoid ambassador was one of the few who had tried to be friendly with the humans. Its compound eyes caught the light as it turned toward Hyrie. Good morning, Ambassador Hyrie, Velthar said. Its voice came from a translator device since its species communicated through chemical signals and clicks. I hope you rested well. Good morning, Ambassador Velthar. I slept fine, thank you. Hyrie took her seat at the human section of the hall. More ambassadors arrived. Threx glided in on its wings, settling onto a perch designed for avian species. Chromath stomped in heavily, its reptilian tail swishing behind it. The council security director had made no secret of its dislike for humans. The session began with routine matters, trade agreements, resource allocations, scientific cooperation programs. Hyrie participated when needed, but mostly she listened and learned. Humanity was still new here, still finding its place. During a break, Velthar approached her. May I ask you something personal, Ambassador? Of course, Hyrie said, though she felt her shoulders tense. The guards at your door. Why do you have them? No other embassy has guards. We are all safe here. The council ensures peace. Hyrie had been expecting this question for weeks. It is our protocol. Standard procedure for our diplomatic missions. But why is it your protocol? Velthar pressed gently. We do not understand. Do you not trust the council's protection? Before Hyrie could answer, Chromath's heavy voice interrupted. They do not trust anyone. Look at them. Armed soldiers standing guard, like we are savages, who might attack in the night. It is insulting. Several other ambassadors turned to listen. Hyrie felt dozens of eyes on her. Compound and single, large and small. We mean no insult, Hyrie said carefully. Our security measures are not a reflection on the council. They are simply how we have always operated. Why? Velthar asked again. Where we come from, such guards are not needed. We trust each other. Is trust not possible for humans? Hyrie chose her words slowly. Trust is very important to humans. But so is security. We have learned to value both. Learned? Threx spoke up, its voice melodic. What taught you this lesson? Our history, Hyrie said simply. Chromath snorted, a sound like rocks grinding together. Your history of fighting each other, you mean? We know you barely stopped warring among yourselves before you reached the stars. Primitive. The word hung in the air. Hyrie felt anger flash through her, but she pushed it down. Losing her temper would prove nothing. Our history has taught us many things, she said calmly. Perhaps someday we can share those lessons. The session resumed before the conversation could continue. But Hyrie felt the weight of those questions. She knew they would not go away. That evening, she returned to find Doyun still at his post. A different guard now, actually. Junho stood there, looking exactly like Doyun had. Rifle ready, eyes alert. Junho, can I ask you something? Hyrie said. Yes, Ambassador. Does it bother you? The way they look at you? The things they say? Junho was quiet for a moment. Then he said, They have never known what we have known. They cannot understand what they have never experienced. So no, it does not bother me. I know why I stand here. Why do you stand here? Kyrie asked. Junho looked at her directly for the first time. Because someone has to. Because I know what happens when no one does. Hyrie nodded slowly and went inside. She understood what he meant, even if the council did not. The question was whether they would ever need to understand, or whether this place really was as safe as everyone believed. She looked at her data tablets, at the reports from Earth, at the history files Minho had been preparing. Maybe it was time to show them. Maybe it was time to answer the question properly. Or maybe, she thought, they would learn the answer themselves eventually. Outside, Junho stood guard, patient and watchful, as humans had always been. 3 weeks had passed since the conversation, and the question had not gone away. If anything, it had grown larger. Hyrie heard whispers in the corridors. She saw the stairs that followed Doyun and the other guards. The human security presence had become a topic of debate among the council members. Minho had been working late every night, going through Earth's historical archives. He sat in the embassy library, surrounded by holographic displays showing timelines, maps, and images. Some of the images were hard to look at. Even for him, how much should we show them? He asked Hyrie when she came to check on his progress. Everything, Hyrie said. If they want to know, they should know the truth. Some of this is very dark, Minho warned. Their species have not seen these things. Then maybe they need to see them, Hyrie replied. Maybe that is the only way they will understand. The next council session began normally, but Hyrie knew what was coming. She had received a formal request from Velthar to address the issue of human security protocols. It was on the agenda, listed in plain text for everyone to see. When the time came, Velthar stood and addressed the assembly. Honored council members, I bring forward a matter that has caused much discussion. The human embassy maintains armed guards at all times. This practice is unique among all our member species. I formally request an explanation from the human delegation. All eyes turned to Hyrie. She stood, feeling the weight of the moment. Thank you, Ambassador Velthar. We understand this practice seems unusual to the council. We are prepared to provide a full explanation, but we request time to present our history properly. What we need to share requires context. Chromath stood up, his massive form casting a shadow across several seats. More delays. More excuses. Just answer the question. Why do you guard your door when no civilized species needs to? The word civilized stung. But Hyrie kept her face neutral. We will answer. We simply ask for the opportunity to do so thoroughly. I support this request, Threx said, spreading its wings slightly. If the humans say their answer requires context, Let us give them the chance to provide it. Velthar nodded its agreement. I also support this. Let us schedule a special session dedicated to this topic. We have made studed. We have proceeded completed of this stills. The council voted. The motion passed. In 3 days, the humans would present their explanation. Back at the embassy, Saman stood guard outside while Doyun, Hyeri, and Minho discussed the presentation inside. They want to know why we are the way we are. Doyun said. How do you show that in a presentation? We show them what made us, Minho said quietly. Will they understand? Hyeri asked. No. Doyun said flatly. They will see it, but they will not understand. Not really. You cannot understand by watching. You only understand by living through it. Saman entered the room. She was young for a security officer. Barely 25. She had been listening at the door, as was part of her job. Permission to speak, Ambassador? She asked. Go ahead, Saman. Why don't we just tell them the simple truth? We guard our doors because bad things happen. That is it. That is the whole answer. Doyun shook his head. They do not believe bad things happen. Not here. Not in their perfect council station. Then they are fools, Saman said. They are innocent, Minho corrected gently. There is a difference. They have been lucky. Their evolution was peaceful. They did not have to fight for every scrap of survival, like we did. The next 3 days were busy. Minho compiled thousands of years of human history into a presentation. Hyeri practiced her explanation, trying to find words that would make sense to species who had never experienced what humans had experienced. Doyun continued his guard duties, unchanged by the upcoming session. When Saman asked him if he was nervous, he simply said, I know who I am. I know why I stand here. Their understanding does not change that. The day of the special session arrived. The council assembly hall was full. Every ambassador attended, and many had brought additional staff to witness the presentation. The curiosity was enormous. Hyeri stood at the central podium. Behind her, massive holographic screens lit up, ready to display Minho's carefully prepared files. Honored council members, Hyeri began. You asked us why we guard our doors. The answer is simple to say, but difficult to understand. We guard our doors because of where we come from, because of what we are, because of what we learned. She gestured, and the first images appeared. Ancient Earth. Primitive humans huddled around fires. Our species is approximately 300,000 years old. For most of that time, we lived in small groups, competing for food, water, and shelter. Everything was a threat. Animals that could kill us, weather that could freeze us, other humans who wanted what we had. More images flowed across the screens. Ancient weapons, cave paintings showing battles, fortified villages. We learned to guard our resources. We learned to watch for danger. We learned that the tribe on the other side of the river might be friendly today and hostile tomorrow. Velthar's antennae quivered as it watched. Threx had gone very still on its perch. The presentation continued. Empires rising and falling. Wars spreading across continents. The images grew more detailed, more violent. Medieval sieges. Soldiers dying in trenches. Cities burning from above. We fought ourselves, Hyeri said quietly. For thousands of years, we fought ourselves. Over land, over resources, over ideas, over religion, over things that seem meaningless now, but they were not meaningless to us then. The images showed the worst of humanity. Nuclear explosions, concentration camps, genocides, chemical weapons. Hyeri watched the council members react. Some turned away. Some made sounds of distress in their own languages. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times, Hyeri continued. We came very close to making our world uninhabitable. We killed millions of our own kind, in conflicts that solved nothing. The final images showed Earth from space, scarred but healing. Then human colonies among the stars. Then, finally, the humans arriving at this station. We learned something from all of this pain, Hyrie said. We learned that peace is precious, because it is rare. We learned that safety is valuable, because it is fragile. We learned that guards at the door are not paranoia. They are memory. They are respect for what can go wrong. She paused, letting the silence fill the room. You asked why we guard our door. We guard it because we remember every time in our history when we did not. We guard it because we know what it costs. When you assume safety instead of maintaining it. We guard it because it is who we are. Velthar stood slowly. Your species fought like this? For so long? Yes, Hyrie said simply. And you still do not trust each other? We trust, Hyrie said. But we also verify. We hope for the best and prepare for the worst. That is what our history taught us. Cromath's voice was different now, quieter. I did not know. I did not understand. We do not expect you to understand, Hyrie said. We only ask that you accept that this is who we are. Our guards are not an insult to you. They are a promise to ourselves that we will not forget. The session ended in unusual silence. As the ambassadors filed out, many looked at the human guards, standing outside the embassy with different eyes. That night, Doyun stood at his post as always. But this time, Velthar stopped and looked at him. Does it help? The insectoid asked. Standing here? Yes, Doyun said. Why? Because someone is watching. Because someone is ready. Because someone remembers. Velthar nodded slowly and walked away, thinking about memories and safety and the price of peace. The days after the presentation were strange. The station felt different somehow. Though nothing had physically changed, ambassadors who had walked past the human guards with laughter or contempt now walked past with thoughtful silence. Some even nodded respectfully. But Hyrie knew that seeing images was not the same as understanding. Knowledge entered the mind, but wisdom required something deeper. She wondered if these peaceful species could ever truly grasp what humans carried inside them. Jiwan, the human xenoanthropologist, had arrived on a supply ship 2 days after the presentation. She was tall and moved with careful grace, always aware of how her presence might affect others. Her job was to help humans understand alien cultures, and to help aliens understand humans. You showed them our history, Jiwan said to Hyrie over tea in the embassy common area. But history is just pictures. And words. Did they feel it? I do not know, Hyrie admitted. How do you make someone feel something they have never experienced? You cannot, Jiwan said simply, but you can help them imagine it. You can build bridges between their experience and ours. That evening, Velthar requested a private meeting with Hyrie and Jiwan. They met in a neutral conference room, one of the many scattered throughout the station. The insectoid ambassador arrived alone, without staff, which was unusual. Thank you for meeting with me, Velthar said, settling into a chair designed for its body structure. I have been thinking about your presentation. I have been thinking about it constantly. In fact, what troubles you? Jiwan asked gently. Everything troubles me, Velthar said. My species had one war. One. It was 3,000 years ago. 2 hive colonies disagreed about territory. 300 individuals died before the queens negotiated peace. We still remember it as the darkest moment in our history. We teach children about it as a warning. Velthar's antennae moved in patterns that the translator could not interpret. But you showed us wars that killed millions, cities destroyed, entire populations erased, and you said this happened many times. How? How does a species survive that? Hyrie looked at Jiwan, who nodded for her to answer. We survived because we had to, Hyrie said. We survived because the alternative was extinction. We adapted. We learned. Sometimes, we learned the wrong lessons and had to learn again. But we kept going. I cannot imagine it, Velthar said quietly. I watched your presentation 3 times. I tried to imagine my people in those situations. I cannot. We would not become warriors. We would simply die. Many humans died too. Jiwan said softly. Not everyone becomes a warrior. Some people are peaceful by nature. They were the ones who built the cultures between the wars. They were the ones who remembered art and music and love when everything was burning around them. Threx arrived then, gliding through the door. The avian ambassador had also requested to join the meeting. I hope I am not intruding, Threx said. But I have questions also. Please, join us, Hyri said. Threx settled onto a perch. My people evolved in flocks. We survive through cooperation. A bird alone dies quickly. A flock thrives. We cannot understand conflict within the flock. When you showed us humans fighting humans, I felt something I have never felt before. I think it was horror. It is horrible, Jiwan agreed. We do not celebrate that history. We are not proud of it. Then why did you show us? Threx asked. Because it is the truth, Hyri said. You asked why we guard our doors. That history is why. We cannot explain one without the other. Minho had prepared additional materials, smaller presentations about specific aspects of human development. Jiwan had suggested showing these to interested ambassadors in smaller, more intimate settings. Over the next week, several species sent representatives. They learned about human tribalism, about how humans formed groups, and then saw other groups as threats. They learned about resource scarcity and how it drove conflict. They learned about ideologies and religions, about how ideas could be as dangerous as weapons. Velthar attended every session, absorbing everything. After one particularly difficult presentation about the world wars, the insectoid ambassador sat in silence for several minutes. I understand now why you guard your door, Velthar finally said. But I have a new question. Do you guard your door because you fear us, or because you fear yourselves? Quote, Doyun had been standing guard at the conference room entrance. He spoke for the first time in these meetings. We guard because we understand what is possible. Any species can become a threat under the right circumstances. Even ourselves. Especially ourselves. You do not trust yourselves? Threx asked, genuinely confused. We trust ourselves to be human. Doyun said. That means we trust ourselves to be capable of both great good and terrible evil. We prepare for both possibilities. Something strange happened then. A being that had been silent through all the sessions finally spoke. Kira, then, was an energy-based life form, ancient beyond measure. It rarely involved itself in council politics, serving only as an observer. Most species forgot it was even present. The humans understand something you have all forgotten, Kira then said, its voice resonating in a way that bypassed the translators and went straight into the mind. They remember that civilization is not the natural state. It is an achievement. It must be maintained. Everyone turned toward the shimmering form that was Kyra then. You species that evolved in peace. You think peace is normal. You think cooperation is the default. But look at your own worlds. Are there not predators and prey? Is there not competition for resources? You simply never had to compete with your own kind on a large scale. You were lucky. Kira then moved closer to the group. Humans were not lucky. They had to build their peace from scratch, with hands still bloody from their last war. They had to choose cooperation, while still remembering how to destroy each other. That is a harder achievement than yours. The ancient being turned toward Doyun. You ask why they guard their doors. They guard because they paid the price to know what happens when they do not. They guard because they love peace enough to protect it with force. They guard because they are the only ones here who remember what it took to reach the stars. The room was silent after that. Even Velthar, usually so full of questions, had nothing to say. Later that night, Hyeri found Doyun at his post. "Did you know Kira then was paying attention to all of this?" she asked. "Old things notice patterns," Doyun said. "It has probably seen this before. Species like us, meeting species like them. It knows how this goes." "How does it go?" Hyeri asked. "One of two ways," Doyun said. "Either they learn from us, or they learn the hard way." "I hope they learn from us," Hyeri said. "So do I," Doyun agreed. "But I will keep guarding this door either way." Inside the embassy, Jiwan and Minho were discussing the sessions. Somin was preparing for her shift, checking her equipment with the same careful attention Doyun always showed. The station continued its peaceful rotation around the star. Ships came and went. Diplomats negotiated and debated. Gardens grew and flourished. And at the human embassy door, the guards stood watch, as they always had, as they always would. Not because they expected danger today, but because they remembered all the yesterdays when danger came to those who were not ready. Somewhere in the station, Velthar was watching recordings of the presentations again, trying to absorb lessons from a history its people had never lived. Threx was writing reports for its home world, struggling to find words for concepts that had no translation in its language. And Kira then, ancient and patient, simply watched and waited to see what would happen next. It had seen many species rise and fall. It knew that peace was not the absence of danger. Peace was what happened when someone stood guard against the danger. Day after day, shift after shift, remembering always that safety was something you maintained, not something you assumed. The alarm started at 0300 station time. It was not the gentle chime that announced shift changes, or the pleasant tone that called people to meals. This was a harsh, grinding shriek that cut through walls, and sleep, and peace. Doyun was awake instantly. He had been sleeping in his quarters, but his body reacted before his mind fully processed the sound. He was dressed and armed. In 40 seconds, his training had never gone away, even after years of peace. The corridor outside was chaos. Aliens stumbled from their quarters, confused and frightened. Most had never heard an alarm like this. Some did not even recognize it as a warning. Doyun activated his communicator. "All human security personnel, report status." Voices crackled back immediately. Junho from the west corridor, Somin from the embassy entrance. Others from their posts throughout the station. Everyone was awake. Everyone was ready. "What is happening?" Hyeri's voice came through. She sounded calm, but Doyun could hear the tension underneath. "Unknown. The station-wide alert just activated. Stay inside the embassy. We are sealing all entrances now." Inside the embassy, Nari was already at her intelligence station, fingers moving across multiple screens. The human intelligence officer had been monitoring station communications since the alarm started. "I am picking up reports of intruders," Nari said. "Multiple locations. Armed hostiles. Council security is responding, but sounds completely unprepared." Minho appeared beside Hyeri, still pulling on his uniform jacket. "Who would attack the station? We are in neutral space. The Council has treaties with everyone." "Not everyone," Nari said grimly. "I am identifying the hostile signatures now. These are Kelvarn raiders." Hyeri felt her blood go cold. The Kelvarn were supposed to be gone, wiped out in a campaign by the Council 50 years ago. But apparently, some had survived, and now they were here. The embassy door sealed shut with a heavy thud. Electromagnetic locks engaged. Somin stood on the inside, her rifle powered up and ready. 2 more guards, Unji and Sok, took positions at secondary entrances. "We are secure," Somin reported. "Embassy is locked down." Outside in the corridors, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Council security forces were scattered and confused. Chromath's people had ceremonial weapons. Beautiful things, designed for parades and tradition. They had not fired them in actual combat in generations. The Kelvarn had real weapons. They moved through the station in organized groups, taking hostages and securing key positions. They knew exactly what they were doing. Doyun moved through the chaos toward Council Security's central command. He found Chromath there, surrounded by panicking officers who were receiving reports faster than they could process them. "You need to evacuate the civilian areas," Doyun said without preamble. Chromath turned, its reptilian face showing confusion and fear. "We are trying, but the raiders are blocking the main passages. My people cannot fight them. We do not know how." "Then let us help," Doyun said. "Your guards are at your embassy," Chromath protested. "Not all of them," Doyun said. Chromath hesitated only a moment, then nodded. "What do you need?" "Station schematics, current raider positions, and permission to engage hostiles with lethal force if necessary." Inside the embassy, Hyeri was making the same decision. "Nari, can you track the raiders?" "Yes, I have access to the station sensors. They are not even trying to hide. They think they have already won." "How many hostiles?" "I count 37 signatures. They have split into 6 groups. One group is moving toward the council chambers. Another is herding civilians toward Cargo Bay 3. The others are securing key infrastructure points." Hyeri looked at the sealed door. Behind it, the station was falling apart. People were dying, and the humans had the only real military force available. She made her decision. "Soman, assemble a response team. Coordinate with Doyun and Junho. We are going out there." "Ambassador, if we leave the embassy undefended," Soman began. "We are not leaving it undefended. Unji and Sok will hold this position. But people need help, and we are the only ones who can provide it." Soman's face broke into a fierce grin. "Yes, Ambassador. About time." The human response was swift and precise. Doyun led one team from the central command. Junho brought another from the west sector. Soman's group deployed from the embassy. They moved through the station like they had trained for exactly this scenario, because they had. The first encounter happened near the main gardens. A group of Kelvarn raiders had cornered a dozen aliens, including Velthar and Threx. The hostages were on their knees, and the raiders were arguing about what to do with them. Junho's team arrived silently. Hand signals coordinated their approach. The humans had trained for close-quarters combat in stations and ships. They knew every angle, every line of sight. "Non-lethal if possible," Junho whispered into his communicator. "But protect the hostages first." 1. The engagement lasted 30 seconds. The humans used stun weapons first, dropping 3 raiders before the others could react. When the Kelvarn returned fire, the humans shifted to lethal force. It was clean, efficient, and completely overwhelming. The raiders never had a chance. They were used to fighting unprepared civilians and ceremonial guards. They had never faced humans trained in actual combat. Velthar watched in shock as Junho's team secured the area. The humans moved like they were dancing, each one knowing exactly where the others would be. It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. "Are you injured?" Junho asked, kneeling beside Velthar. No, we are fine. You came. You saved us." "Move to the embassy," Junho said. "It is the most secure location on the station right now. Follow the route I am sending to your communicator." Similar scenes played out across the station. Doyun's team intercepted the raiders heading for the council chambers. Soman's group rescued the civilians being herded toward the cargo bay. Each time, the humans demonstrated a level of tactical skill that shocked the aliens watching. In Central Command, Nari was coordinating everything. Her screens showed every human team, every raider group, every civilian concentration. She guided her people through the station like a conductor leading an orchestra. "Doyun, 3 raiders moving toward your position from Corridor 9. Junho, you have a clear path to the medical bay. Soman, be advised there are hostages in the next room." The humans acknowledged each instruction and moved accordingly. They trusted Nari. They trusted each other. They had trained together for scenarios worse than this. 2 hours after the alarm started, it was over. All the raiders were either captured or neutralized. The hostages were safe. The station infrastructure was secure. Chromath stood in central command, staring at the tactical display showing the human positions. I have never seen anything like that. Your people moved through my station like they owned it. We practiced, Doyun said simply. We always practice. But you practiced for combat on a peaceful station. Why? Doyun looked at the reptilian commander. Because hope is not a strategy. Because readiness is not paranoia. Because we learned a long time ago that peace is something you protect, not something that protects you. Medical teams were treating the injured now. Unji, who had stayed to guard the embassy, was now helping with the wounded in the station's medical bay. She worked alongside alien doctors, her human emergency training proving useful even with species she had never treated before. Sok was with the traumatized civilians, helping them process what had happened. His psychological training was designed for humans. But trauma was trauma. Fear was universal. In the council chambers, ambassadors were gathering again. This time for an emergency session. Many of them were the ones who had been rescued by human teams. They looked at the guards differently now. Velthar stood and spoke first. The humans saved us. When we were helpless, when our security forces could not help, the humans came. They risked themselves for us. Threx spread its wings in agreement. I watched them fight. I have never seen such skill, such precision. They knew exactly what to do. Chromath's voice was heavy with emotion. I mocked them. I called them paranoid. I called them primitive. I was wrong. They were prepared. We were not. Many of my people died because we did not know how to fight. The humans did. The session continued late into the night. Proposals were made for new security protocols, training programs, joint defense initiatives. The council had learned something today, written in fear and blood and survival. Outside the chambers, Doyun stood at his post again. His shift had technically ended hours ago, but he stayed. Junho stood beside him now, also off-duty but unwilling to leave. Do you think they understand now? Junho asked quietly. They understand that danger is real, Doyun said. Whether they understand why we were ready for it, I do not know. But they are alive to learn, and that is enough. Inside the embassy, Hyeri was writing her report to Earth. The words felt inadequate. How do you explain that everything the aliens questioned about humanity turned out to be exactly what saved them? Nari was still monitoring communications, listening to what the other species were saying to each other. The conversations were different now. Fear, yes, but also gratitude and respect. Salmon was cleaning her rifle. The same ritual she had performed 1,000 times. Today felt right, she said to no one in particular. Like everything we trained for meant something, the station slowly returned to normal. Repairs began. Investigations started. The Kelvarn prisoners were secured. Life went on, but something had changed. The other species looked at the human guards and saw not paranoia but wisdom. They saw not aggression, but protection. They saw people who had been ready when no one else was. And the humans continued their watch, as they always had, standing guard at doors that others now understood needed guarding. The council assembly hall looked different now. Part of the ceiling had been damaged in the attack, temporarily patched but not yet fully repaired. It was a reminder, a scar, the kind of mark that changes how you see a place. 7 days had passed since the Kelvarn raid. 7 days of investigations, repairs, and difficult conversations. The station had survived, but its innocence had not. Today was the emergency council session, and every ambassador was present. The hall was full in a way it had never been before. Everyone wanted to hear what would be said. Everyone needed to understand what had happened and why. Chromath stood first. The reptilian commander looked older somehow, despite his species aging differently than humans. Weight sat on his shoulders now. The weight of the people he had lost. "This council owes the humans a debt," Chromath began, his voice carrying through the hall. "My security forces were unprepared. We had beautiful weapons and no idea how to use them. We had protocols for ceremonies and no training for combat. When the raiders came, we failed." He paused, looking toward the human section where Hyri sat with her delegation. The humans did not fail. They knew exactly what to do. They moved through our station, like they had planned for this exact situation. Because they had. While we mocked their guards and called them paranoid, they were preparing to save us. Velthar stood next. The insectoid ambassador's antennae moved in patterns that showed distress and gratitude mixed together. 3 weeks ago, I asked the humans why they guarded their door. They showed us their history. We saw images of their wars and their violence. We thought we understood, but we did not. Not really. We saw pictures. They lived the reality. The translator carried Velthar's words throughout the hall. When the raiders had us on our knees, when I thought I would die, the humans came. I watched them fight. It was not like our histories or our stories. It was fast and precise and terrifying. They knew violence in a way we never have, and they used that knowledge to protect us. Threx spread its wings, a gesture of deep respect in avian culture. My people have a saying: "The bird that has never known the storm thinks the sky is always peaceful." We were those birds. The humans tried to tell us about storms, but we did not believe. Now we have felt the wind. Now we know. Ambassador after ambassador spoke, each one acknowledging what had happened, each one expressing gratitude and something else. Understanding, maybe. Or the beginning of it. Finally, the council speaker called on the human delegation. Hyeri stood, and the hall fell silent. Everyone wanted to hear what the humans would say now. But Hyeri stepped aside. "I am not the one who should answer the question," she said. Ambassador Velthar asked why we guard our door. I think the person who has been guarding that door should be the one to answer. Doyun stood. He was not a diplomat. He was not comfortable speaking to large groups, but he was a human who had stood watch for 30 years, on worlds and ships and stations. He knew why he did what he did. He walked to the center of the hall. His uniform was clean and pressed, but everyone could see the marks of combat on him. The careful way he moved. The alert eyes that never stopped scanning. The readiness that never went away. "You asked why we guard our door," Doyun said. His voice was not loud, but everyone heard him. "I will tell you why." He looked around the hall, meeting eyes, compound and single and strange. "We guard because we come from a world where threats were always real. Not sometimes. Not rarely. Always. For thousands of years, danger was part of every day. We learned to watch. We learned to prepare. We learned to be ready." He took a breath and continued. "We guard because we learned through blood that locks can be picked, that walls can be breached, that peace can be shattered by people who do not value it. We learned these lessons over and over until they became part of who we are." Doyun's words were simple, but they carried weight. "We guard because trust is earned slowly and lost instantly. We trust you. We are here because we want to be part of this council. But trust does not mean abandoning preparation. It means hoping for the best while being ready for the worst." He looked at Velthar directly. "We guard because we remember every time we did not guard the door, every time we assumed safety, every time we thought the danger was over. We remember what happened when we were not ready. And we promised ourselves we would never forget." The hall was absolutely silent now. "We guard because we know what evil looks like. We have been both victim and perpetrator. We have done terrible things and had terrible things done to us. That knowledge does not leave you. It teaches you. It changes you." Doyun's voice grew stronger. You evolved in peace. You developed in safety. You built your civilizations without the constant pressure of violence. That is beautiful. That is lucky. But it left you unprepared for species like the Kelvarn, for threats that do not care about your treaties or your councils or your belief in civilized behavior. He spread his hands. We evolved in fire. Every generation fought to survive. Every generation lost people they loved to violence. We crawled toward peace, through an ocean of blood. When we finally reached the stars, we still carried that history with us. We still knew what the universe could do. Doyun looked at each section of the hall. We do not guard because we do not trust you. We guard because we understand the universe in ways you have not needed to. We guard because while you can imagine danger, we remember it. We live with it. We prepare for it. He turned to Chromath. Your people died because no one was ready. That is not your fault. You come from a different history, but now you know. Now you have felt what we have always known. The question is, what you do with that knowledge. Doyun looked back at the assembled council. We guard your doors now, too. Not because we think you cannot, but because we know you have not needed to. And until you learn, until you train, until you are ready, someone needs to stand watch. Someone needs to remember that safety is not given. It is maintained. He paused, then added quietly, we guard because it keeps people alive. Because it kept you alive. Because it is what we know how to do. And because someone has to. Doyun finished and walked back to his seat. The hall remained silent for several long moments. Then, Kyra, the ancient observer, spoke again. Its voice resonated through the chamber. The human has answered your question. But, let me add context. I have observed many species over many ages. I have seen peaceful species encounter violent ones. It usually ends with the peaceful species learning violence, or dying, the energy being moved through the hall. Humanity is unique. They learned violence from themselves. They became so good at it that they nearly destroyed their own world. But they stopped. They chose peace, not because they did not know how to fight, but because they knew too well. They chose to guard the door, instead of kicking it down. Kyra form brightened. That is a harder choice than yours. You chose peace from innocence. They chose peace from experience. Your peace is beautiful, but fragile. Their peace is scarred, but strong. You need each other. They need to remember why peace matters. You need to remember that peace requires protection. The session continued for hours after that. Proposals were made and voted on. The council established a new security framework with human oversight. Training programs were designed to teach other species what humans already knew. A joint defense force was created, with humans leading the initial development. But the real change was deeper than protocols and programs. It was in the way ambassadors looked at the human guards now. It was in the questions they asked. Not with mockery, but with genuine desire to learn. Velthar approached Doyun after the session. I would like to learn. To stand watch like you do. Will you teach me? Doyun studied the insectoid for a moment. Then nodded. Yes. But understand. It is not just about standing in one place. It is about awareness. About never relaxing completely. About always being ready. I understand now, Velthar said. Over the following weeks, the station transformed. Members of various species began training with human security personnel. Salmon taught a class on situational awareness. Junho demonstrated close-quarters combat. Nari explained intelligence gathering and threat assessment. It was slow. The alien species did not have human reflexes or human history. They learned the movements, but not yet the instinct. But they were trying. Minho created educational programs about human military history, not as entertainment, but as instruction. Other species studied human tactics and strategies, looking for principles they could apply. Yunji and Siok worked with alien medical and psychological services, sharing human knowledge about trauma and recovery. The attack had hurt more than bodies. It had shattered assumptions. People needed help understanding their new reality. One evening, Hyeri found Do-yoon at his usual post. But he was not alone. Velthar stood beside him, trying to mimic his stance. His alertness. "How is the training going?" Hyeri asked. "Slowly," Do-yoon said. "But that is expected. They are learning something their species never needed to know." Velthar's antennae moved. "It is harder than I thought. Standing still, but being alert. Watching without seeming to watch. Being ready for something that probably will not happen. That is the job," Do-yoon said simply. "Does it get easier?" Velthar asked. Do-yoon was quiet for a moment, then said, "No, it does not get easier. Your body learns the movements. Your mind learns the patterns. But the weight of responsibility never gets lighter. You are always aware that if you fail, people die. Then why do it?" "Because it keeps people safe," Do-yoon said. He looked at the insectoid trying so hard to learn. "You saw it. You felt it. When the raiders had you on your knees, you felt helpless. You felt the terror of being unable to protect yourself. That feeling, that is what we learned to prepare against. Not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us." Velthar nodded slowly. "I think I am beginning to understand. Not fully. Maybe never fully. But I see why you stand here. Why you always stood here." Inside the embassy, the rest of the human delegation was discussing the changes. The council had formally requested human assistance in establishing security throughout their territory. It was a massive undertaking. "We will need more personnel," Hyeri said. "They will send it," Minho said. "This is what humanity has always done. We learn hard lessons, and then we share what we learned. We pay the cost of knowledge, and then we give it away for free." Salman, who had been listening, spoke up. "Is it strange that I feel proud right now? We were mocked for weeks. And now, they want to be like us." "Not strange," Hyeri said. "But remember, they do not want to be like us. They want to learn what we know. There is a difference. They are still themselves. They are just adding our knowledge to their own." The station continued its rotation. Ships came and went. Trade continued. Diplomacy resumed. But everything was different now, in small ways. Guards stood at doors that had never been guarded before. Training sessions filled gymnasiums that had only hosted cultural events. Young aliens practiced movements that felt unnatural, but necessary. And at the human embassy, Do-yoon stood watch, as he always had. But now Velthar stood with him, learning, watching, beginning to understand why someone guards the door. Not because they fear what is inside, not because they do not trust their neighbors, but because they remember. Because they know. Because they learned through pain and loss that peace is precious and fragile and worth protecting. Because someone has to stand guard. Because that is what keeps people safe. Because that is the answer.